what's going on in Israel. As I'm sure everyone is aware, times are a little bit tense now in Israel. I'd like to help you understand what's happening. Before I continue, a couple of warnings. First, I'm just a tour guide, so anything I tell you has no legal authority or backing. Second, if you don't agree with me, that's fine, that's okay. Tell me why, logically and with no anger. If you call me names or yell at me, then you've shown me and others that, well, that you're an idiot. Anyhow, I'll lay out all the facts for you, and then you can be the judge. The present crisis is about the government wanting to reform the relationship between the government and the Supreme Court. The present government and many on the right feel that the Supreme Court is too powerful and has used this power to veto too many government laws. The truth is that since the founding of the state, the Supreme Court has only cancelled 22 government laws, sometimes to the advantage of the right wing and sometimes to the advantage of the left. Many in the opposition feel that changing the relationship between the Supreme Court and the government would make Israel less of a democracy, even, dare I say it, a dictatorship. The ministers on the right pushing for the change claim that it will actually strengthen democracy in Israel, but they haven't actually offered any evidence for this claim. I also have to add that Israel does not have a constitution, and we only have one house of elected representatives, the Knesset, or the parliament, no Senate or upper chamber, which can veto government law. The government always controls the coalition and has tremendous power. In addition, the power is very centralized. We have no provinces, states, or cantons. The central government controls everything. I should also mention this. I'm shooting this video on Monday, the 20th of February, 2023. Everything changes fast in Israel for anybody watching in the past. Okay, so what do they want to do? One, they want to change how judges are chosen. Today, there is a government committee made up of the Minister of Justice, one more minister, 3 Supreme Court judges, 2 members of a parliament chosen in a secret vote, and 2 representatives from the Lawyers Association. 9 in all, and 7 have to agree in order to appoint someone. No side has a clear majority in this committee. The present Minister of Justice wants to change the committee to 11 members by adding 3 ministers, 3 members of parliament, including one from the opposition, 3 judges, and 2 representatives of the public who will be appointed by the Minister of Justice. And you would only need a majority of 6 out of 11 to appoint someone. Well, if you do the math correctly, then you'll see that the coalition, thus the government, will always have a majority and thus be able to appoint whomever they wish. 2, invalidation of laws. The Parliament has passed 16 basic laws which are thought of as super laws, or maybe constitutional laws. I remind you that we do not have a constitution in Israel. At the moment, if the government passes a law that goes against the basic law, then the Supreme Court can cancel that law. Not the basic law, the new one. How? Currently, we do not need the entirety of the Supreme Court to cancel a government law. Even a panel of 3 judges can veto a government law. The government wants to change it so that 80% of the Supreme Court has to agree to veto a law, and only if there is a fundamental contradiction between it and a basic law. Essentially, the Supreme Court would need a supermajority to cancel laws. Yeah, I know, my head hurts too. I must point out that laws such as this are non-existent in all other democracies. 3, an override clause. This, I think, is the big one. To put it simply, the Justice Minister wants to give the government the power to override any Supreme Court decision with just a simple majority. This would effectively neuter any remaining power that the Supreme Court has. Fundamentally, the government would be able to pass any law they want without interference from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court behind me, for those of you watching. 4, reasonability. In law, reasonability is the concept of how an ideal person would act or behave. Am I a reasonable person? No idea. I'm not a lawyer. This is a legal theory which was adopted by the Israeli courts from the British common law system in 1948. In fact, reasonability is an idea which is accepted or used in a majority, maybe all, of Western legal systems. Just recently, this concept was used by the courts when they ruled that Ari Deri was not allowed to hold a position as a cabinet minister due to his multiple convictions for tax evasion. They felt it was unreasonable for such a man to be a government minister. Who would have thought? The government wants to cancel or invalidate the use of this legal concept by the Supreme Court. This would give the government much more leeway without worrying about interference from the courts. 5, the legal advisors. The legal advisors are the ones who interpret the law for the government ministers and the bureaucracy. It is understood today that the advisors' opinions are correct and that the government has to follow their advice. The present government wants to change this and appoint lawyers who would first be loyal to the minister and not necessarily to the law. The rule of law is closely linked with the ideals of democracy. A democratic state under the rule of law is a state where the public elect their own leaders, and the government itself is bound by the law, while also helping to ensure that the law is respected amongst citizens of the state. All of this begs the age-old question, which is more important, the law or the government? Do we want the government to be above the law, or do we want the government to be ruled by the law? I'm pretty sure that I know what my answer is. Oh, and like and subscribe.